Welcome, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. It is April 1st, April Fool's Day, and we're welcoming everyone to our monthly Health Innovation Community Partnership meeting. We're really excited to be celebrating April with you. A lot of great things are happening in the community as we open up again, and we have some wonderful presentations for you coming up ahead. So, with that, let's go ahead and get started.
Investment then, right?
As a note, please make sure to mute yourself when you come into the meeting space, but we will have plenty of time for Q&A and ask you to unmute yourself at the appropriate moments. Please note that this meeting is being recorded, and after we host the meeting in about a week's time, we will post the recording to our project website, hicpla.org. We ask you to please feel free to keep yourselves on camera or off as you like. We love seeing your faces, but we understand if you need to be off camera. We will have time for Q&A throughout the presentation, so at appropriate moments, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll go ahead and call on you. We also encourage everyone to take full advantage of the chat. Make sure you add your questions and comments into there so we can read them out during the appropriate portion of the presentation. Before we move on, if you haven't already, please do select the interpretation globe to pick the language of your choice down below. I'll go ahead and kick us off by reading our HICP guiding principles. These are mutually agreed upon community commitments that help us as we move through this conversation together. All participants agree to basic principles prioritizing equity, community resilience, and health in all programs and projects. All participants agree to approach issues with an open mind, be willing to engage in dialogue, and commit to thinking boldly about solutions. Participants will state views and ask genuine questions. Participants will seek to avoid monologues and arguments, move to conversations where participants are curious and seek to understand various points of view. Participants will explain reasoning and intent, share how we reach our conclusions so that others can understand our divergent reasoning. Participants will attack the problem and not the person, organization, or institution. Participants will define key terms so that we can attain a shared understanding. Participants will share all relevant information. Participants will always arrive prepared for the meeting. During meetings, only one person speaks at a time. We will not engage in sidebar conversations. Participants will work to develop a comprehensive, common set of information with which to solve problems and make decisions. Participants will jointly design next steps. So let's take a quick look at our agenda for the day. As always, we'll kick our meeting off with some comments and a presentation by Jorge Orozco of the LAC-USC Medical Center. We have a good update on the Third and Dangler project, some exciting developments there. We'll be updating you on the tenant protections and some changes in the landscape to make sure that everyone's well informed about the protections that are out there for tenant residents. We'll have a presentation on the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District, as well as an update on the Metro Area Plan. And we'll conclude with some wonderful catch-up information from the General Hospital Feasibility Study. So with that, I'm super excited to welcome Jorge Orozco, Chief Executive Officer of the LAC-USC Medical Center, to tell us what's going on the campus. Jorge.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm very excited to be here and to share really great news about our pandemic. We have definitely seen a significant reduction of patients coming in to our emergency department with any type of symptomology related to COVID. There are still individuals who are being admitted, and we test every patient that is admitted who are testing positive. But as many of you know, the RNA remains in our system for probably on average 90 days. And so you still test positive with the PCR test for a long time. So we should be seeing that positive test result decreasing over time. But really, the amount of virus circulating in our community is extremely low. And I hope many of you have enjoyed some time without masks and gathering with friends. Um, let's see, Heather, are you controlling the slides? Yeah, all right. Just to share a few things, we are very proud and excited to announce that we have received the Healthcare Equality Index Leader Award for 2022. This is a designation for healthcare facilities who have demonstrated policies and procedures, services that are really responsive to the LGBTQ plus community. And we are very happy that we've been recognized again for this. Next slide, please. Just an announcement. Blood is so important to what we do, especially because we are a level 1 trauma center and one of the largest in Los Angeles County. So availability of blood a few months ago was a challenge. Fortunately, the blood supply in Southern California is much better, but we still need blood. And so we're hosting monthly blood drives here on our campus. And the next one is Tuesday, April 28th. There's a QR code here. Please scan it if you would like to participate and donate blood. We'd appreciate that. Let's see. We are still running our COVID vaccine clinic for the vaccine and the flu shot. Twice a week we are open. It's in the historic General Hospital. And everyone is welcome, including community members. So please come by and receive your booster or your vaccine or your flu shot. So thank you. We have celebrated Women's History Month last month throughout the month of March. And we highlighted many of the amazing women on our campus. And we have developed some videos to share. There's a link, I think, Heather.
Yeah, we're going to put the links in the chat, actually, Jorge, so people
Okay.
can access them that way.
Okay, so please get to know some of our amazing leaders on our campus. Let's see. We also celebrated National Doctors Day last week. And we really do have a group of world-class physicians delivering great care to our patients. And so these are pictures of some of the celebrations. Our nurses, nursing department gave them some gifts and some cookies and some goodies. But we really want to recognize the amazing doctors that we have on our campus. And then finally, just to share, and this is really open to anyone who would like to join. This is a town hall meeting that the Department of Mental Health and Department of Human Resources countywide has. It's April 6th from noon to 1. And it's entitled The Courage to Go Together Mental Health Town Hall with Shola Richards. So please, if you're interested, there's a link that you can join. And then I know there were a few questions about COVID. Heather, you had forwarded some questions.
Yep, and we have a question in the chat as well, Jorge, saying, what about the BA2 variant? I think
okay.
people are, do we have concerns? What's sure. Coming next?
Sure. So we have no idea what this virus is going to do. And as long as the virus exists, a normal part of its existence is that it modifies itself. And so there's variants that come out, and they will continue to come out. This BA2 has caused some concern. We're not very concerned in LA, just given the number of people who have been vaccinated, and also the number of people who frankly have been infected as well. And so we're not very concerned. We're still watching it, and absolutely we'll take measures if it becomes concern. But really the main concern is to continue to increase the percentage of individuals in our community that are vaccinated. And we still have a low percentage of kids that are vaccinated, and kids, although they are at low risk of really getting severe illness, they are one of the primary transmitters of the virus. And we saw that as schools opened up and kids sort of gathered and came back to their families. So please encourage all of you to get vaccinated and boosted to protect our community. Any other questions?
Yeah. Any other questions for Jorge about COVID or about anything else happening on our campus? Okay, it looks like you've covered the bases, Jorge. Looks like we're in good hands. Thank you so much for your continuous updates, and I'm just so happy to see the campus kind of turning a corner and really focusing on some really wonderful celebrations, celebrating African American History Month, now Women's History Month, and celebrating our medical professional staff. So looking forward to Hospital Week coming up in the month of May. I'm sure we'll have another announcement for everyone on this meeting at the May HICP meeting. So thank you so much, Jorge.
Thank you.
All right, so next up, we're excited to welcome our colleagues from National Core to come and give us an update on the Third and Dangler project. I'd like to welcome Valerie Acevedo to give us a project update.
Thank you, Heather. Good morning, everyone. My name is Valerie Acevedo. I am the Assistant Development Manager at National Core, also known as National Community Renaissance Corporation. We are the affordable housing developer currently working on the Third and Dangler project located in East LA. And we're just happy to have, to be here and to be able to update you all on the status of the project. And so for the next, 15 minutes, we'll be kind of going over what has been going on. So next slide, please. So real quick, just some general information about the project. The project is located in unincorporated East Los Angeles, excuse me. There are going to be 78 units, 20 studios, 49 one-bedroom apartments, and 9 two-bedroom apartments. There will be local transportation and pedestrian improvements as part of the Affordable Housing Sustainability Communities grant that was awarded to us. Are we okay? No worries. And there will also be, we've actually selected a mural artist to paint a large mural on the project, which we're very excited to see the final product, and we'll be talking about that a little later in the presentation. Also, there's going to be a pocket park included adjacent to the project, which we're also excited about because we've been working with the community to design the project, the pocket park specifically. We'll also be doing some local targeted hire efforts, which we've already been engaged with the community and some community partners as well. And then we'll be doing some local hiring efforts, local leasing efforts, as well as the community programming and space that will be available on site. So currently construction is moving along smoothly. We are expected to complete construction in fall of 2023. Right now, as you can see from the pictures to the right, we are working on the subterranean parking structure. Once this is completed, we'll begin in May the structural concrete work. That'll essentially start the foundation of the project. And then starting in November, we'll also be working on the wood framing. So just kind of at a high level, this is kind of where we're at with the construction. So as part of the project's development, we've been working in collaboration with the LA County Supervisors District to kind of create a community benefits agreement for the project. And here you can kind of see more or less a framework of the agreement, which is essentially an agreement to work with the community to ensure that the community's voice is heard in the development of this project. And so you can kind of see that from the top, moving across, we have obviously the developer, which is us, National Core, Hope Through Housing, which is our service provider, who we work very closely with, and then obviously working very closely with the HICP and then the HICP Advisory Committee. Moving from left to right, you'll see the different committees. I believe there's 5. So we have the Pocket Park, the Public Arts Committee, Local Hire Committee, Local Notification Committee, and then, as mentioned earlier, the Community Center Committee, which will be involved more in the programming and developing programming with the community. And then below that are essentially just the partners who are involved in those committees. So again, since the project has started, we've been very excited to work with the community, work with the county to ensure that the community's voice is heard. So just a quick update on the committee's activities. So as you can see, all the committees are mostly active, minus the local notification, as that's to be determined, right? We're still currently in construction, so we'll be engaging the community to start a planning effort on that end, as well as the community room programming as we near construction completion. But for the most part, we've been meeting with each committee on a quarterly basis to stay informed on what the community's needs are, as well as trying to incorporate any feedback that we get. Let me see. Yeah, so that's kind of, and then again, you can see who the chairs are of each committee and who we've been working closely with. So just to kind of narrow in a little bit more on each committee. So the Pocket Park Committee, we've been contracting with from Law to Spy, which is a local community-based organization in the East LA area. We've been meeting with them on a biweekly basis since October 2020, and then up until March. Obviously, since construction's begun, things have kind of settled down a little bit, but we will be reconvening not too long to make sure that ideas for programming are also incorporated once we start the community center programming committee. So we also worked with the landscape designer to finalize the Pocket Park design, and you'll be seeing that in the next slide. Real quick, just to the left, you can see where the development is located along 3rd Street in Dangler, and then the Pocket Park site is right next to it. So again, it's a small little part, but obviously we're very excited for its incorporation. So here is the final design, and you'll see from on the left side, there's we're trying to incorporate different park, play structures, different, we'll be working with the community to incorporate different types of art that will be available, as well as landscaping, greening, structures, as well as some ADA, so disability-friendly seating. There'll be, water fountains, and then again, working with the community to ensure that there will be services available to the community, educational services in particular. So go ahead, next slide. So the next committee, Local Art, we contracted with the Now Art organization, and we met with them on a biweekly basis starting November, more or less to November of the following year. And again, this was to identify local artists in the community who could essentially provide, the final product of the art mural. So this was an RFQ process, a request for qualifications, and we ultimately decided on 3 finalists. We received quite a bit of submissions on this one proposal, so we're really excited to see that obviously the community is very excited and interested in engaging in this specific project. And ultimately, we decided on Stephanie Mercado, who is also a local artist. The art mural is expected to go up once construction is completed, which again should be in fall 2023. So here's just a picture of Stephanie so that you guys are familiar. Maybe some of you have seen her artwork throughout the area. She is from Boyle Heights, and you can see some of the different types of influences that have really influenced her work. Obviously, she's a strong believer in upholding different values, and you'll see that in her artwork. As well as the different types of artistic mediums. She's a very incredibly creative artist, and we're really excited to see, again, the final product. So here's some of her past work. Again, is part of her proposal. You can see she's incorporated a lot of different elements that if you look very closely, you can see aspects of the community highlighted. And it's just really exciting to see that she's very passionate about, highlighting, what community really means to her. And so it's part of the reason we selected her, right? And so go ahead and next slide. And you can see this is the concept that she proposed when we were in the selection process. And again, she does highlight a lot of different elements relating to nature, the community, historical figures and things of that nature. And it's very abstract in some regards, but also, again, it's very celebratory, right, of the community. So again, very excited to see what the final product will be. So you can see to the right, this is actually some of her current testing. She's been testing on different wall features just to see what, a blown out version will look like. So again, we're very hopeful and enthusiastic that the final product is going to turn out very well. She's also been engaging the community online via Instagram, also her website. You can see in the bolded website below, East Los Love. You can see more of her work there. And obviously she's always welcoming, to the community to participate in submitting images and submitting stories. Right now she's nearing the final design of the product, but she's still very open to, receiving any last minute photos from the community. So we highly encourage you all to visit that website if you haven't already. Okay. So local hire committee, we've been contracted with the Los Angeles Housing Compliance to oversee the local hire goals. We've been meeting on a monthly basis with WEDX and HICP to provide monthly updates on the status of our efforts there. You can see below where we're at in terms of meeting those local hire requirements. So within the local, within the 2 mile radius, it's a little bit more complex to explain, but generally speaking, we have a total of 26 candidates who have submitted, who have come to us, expressed interest in working in construction activities locally. And so far we've identified 4 who are ready to work. Within the 5 mile radius, there's 64 candidates and 8 who are ready to work. And then within the high unemployment zip codes within the LACD area, there are 238 with 32 who are ready to work again. So we're working very closely with LA Housing Compliance, with WEDX and HICP to identify community members who maybe have the skill set but haven't yet been connected to the opportunity to receive training and to receive, just the opportunity to work, right? And so to the left here, I wanted just to identify a specific young man. His name is Fernando. And we were really excited to bring him on because he was actually formerly homeless. And he's been contracted with one of our subcontractors, Andrizi. And we just checked in with him and he's doing really great. We're making sure we're keeping track of his progress to make sure that he doesn't necessarily fall through the cracks. So again, it's just a success story. We're really excited to see more of these folks come through the pipeline. And we encourage all of you, again, if there is anyone locally that you know of who you think would be best fit, who is a potential candidate, please plug us in, connect with either ourselves or LA Housing Compliance, and we'll definitely plug them in. So our next steps for the project are to determine the project name and the pocket park name. We'll be doing this through the HICP Advisory Committee process. This will begin next month. And then we, again, as mentioned previously, we're going to start to engage the community to develop a plan to target the leasing notification process, right? And also the community room programming committee as well. As you can see, we're kind of in the middle of the process, the development process. So, we started in 2017 with the request for proposals and moved forward with securing financing. And now we're in construction. And then once construction is completed, we will begin leasing. And then finally, we'll have our grand opening. So that's generally the update. Again, it's kind of high level, but we wanted to make sure you guys are all up to speed on the project. Obviously happy to go into detail with any questions that you have regarding any of the committees or anything like that. But again, we really do appreciate you having us. I am echoing. Do you guys hear me echoing? So
it wasn't you, Valerie. We had someone joining the call that wasn't
okay.
you. So.
Fair enough. Okay, great. So yeah, any questions? Otherwise, thank you again. And we'll be here, and obviously available to any of you guys at any point.
Yeah, thank you so much, Valerie. It's a beautiful project. We're so excited to see it come together. Do we have any, Rosa, would you like to add anything?
Hi, Valerie. And good morning, everyone. Just a comment about the advisory committee meeting. I know that there's a lot of new members on this call, who have joined us more recently. So thank you for that comprehensive overview. I want to invite anyone who would like to attend any of the advisory meetings to please put your email in the chat, and we will be happy to add you to the notifications regarding those meetings. Okay, so again, Valerie and Core, thank you for your efforts in putting together the community benefit agreement and the different, the different components of it, and just look forward to our continued work together to realize this community benefit agreement. And I know I see a few hands up, so I'll hand it over to Guadalupe.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Valerie, for the presentation and in the update. In regards to the art, I think I just wanted to, put emphasis that you indicated that the artist is still, accepting photos or any that could be, incorporated into the artwork, right? So I think I just wanted to make sure if there was any, of our members that would like to, provide any of the images or ideas. What is the deadline again to do this? And then I know you mentioned there's a website.
Yeah, so she's pretty close to finalizing the design. I would say, within the next few weeks, if you could just send her something. Again, connect with her via the website. So it's eastloslove.com, I believe. But I'm sure she'd be willing to consider, accepting, photos and stories. So.
And yes, and in regards to, second of all, just on the early notification, I see a question on, how that's going to take place. I know that the idea is to convene the committee around that, element. And basically we envisioned some early workshops, right, to the community in regards to what are the requirements, what are the income levels, the documentation that's going to be needed for the applications. So part of the committee work is to develop that plan, how we are going to have that early notification to the local area ahead of the the regular marketing that goes on. And so so we're looking forward to that committee and having that again these workshops and to be able to get into more details on the application process and to give the most notice to the local area so that they can partake in coming into these units.
Yeah, thank you, Guadalupe, for kind of just detailing that. I also just want to mention, if just again at a high level, for those who are interested in learning more about the leasing process, we will likely begin leasing workshops probably at the start of 2023, so come January. So just keep an eye out for email notifications. Feel free to connect with National Core on our website. We have a Third and Dangler coming soon page. And if you sign up there, you'll get monthly updates on when we'll be sending out information regarding leasing. So, and if not, obviously, we highly encourage folks, particularly community-based organizations who want to be part of that committee, to obviously reach out. And again, we'd love to hear your feedback about how we can best target the local community.
Thank you, Valerie. Yes, we definitely have some interest in the chat from people that want to stay connected to the process and learn more about it. So we'll share their contact information with you after the call. We have one additional question. Will the mural be painted, and what measures are being taken to assure the longevity of the art?
Yes, so there's a process that the artist is going to be using. It's called a mural flage. And so essentially she will be creating the mural prior to installation. And it's essentially a process where she has different components of the mural where it's kind of like a, pill stick and, tape on kind of thing. So she won't actually be painting it on to the wall. She'll have the components prior to installation.
I think the question also asks, like, do we know what kind of material will be used so that it can withstand time, basically?
Yeah, so I can't speak directly to the material. That's actually our the person who, or the agency that we're contracting with now. She's the one who could be able to speak a little bit more on the details of the material, but we do know that that is a priority of ours, right? So when we build these projects, ensuring longevity of not just the project, but the artwork itself is a high priority of ours. So it's definitely on our to-do list to make sure that these projects are using material that are gonna last a long time. But again, I can get you that information at a different point.
Thank you so much, Valerie. We have just a comment from Juana saying it is very important that the community participate in the whole process and in the art project. And I want to compliment you on all of the inclusion, as noted here, of our HICP leads, really helping with all of the committee integration and making sure that we keep the community well informed. And we love having you at HICP, so we hope to see you on that kind of regular basis going forward as more things come to fruition. I think we have a question or comment from Diego.
Thank you, Heather. Good morning. Thank you for all the information that's being provided. It sounds very exciting indeed. And I'm just wondering if we're going to get another update on before the grand opening regarding the art. And based on what's being shared, also wondering if the art will be visible to the community at large, beyond the clients and the residents. If you could speak a little bit to that, that would be great.
Yeah, thanks, Diego, for your question. So yes, the artwork will be visible. So as you can see, based off of the rendering here, the location is out towards the sidewalk. So as folks walking in the community or passing by the project, they will be able to see the mural. And then in terms of making available the final product design prior to construction completion. The design itself, again, because of how it's going to be installed, we won't be able to, show you an exact final product, but we can provide an update on the status of where the final design, or how the final design may look. And I know that I think we are planning to provide, again, I'll connect with Heather and Rosa, but, monthly updates more or less on where the project stands.
Fantastic. Thank you, Valerie.
Sure.
Yes, so we have again lots of interest in the art project today. I think it's a really beautiful and inspirational piece. Another comment from Juana saying it is important for residents to be part of the mural where it is an interactive process. So I don't know, Juana, if you want to ask your question directly or make your comment directly. I don't know, maybe one is not able to unmute herself right now, but I just think a lot of interest in really being a strong participant in the art process. And Guadalupe's, thanking you again for the opportunity to share additional photos or commentary or feedback with the artist. So once again, if you have commentary or feedback for Stephanie Mercado, please do visit the website eastloslove.com to provide commentary or imagery that you think should be included and represented in this mural. Now is the time, no time to waste, because she is finalizing that the imagery. So there is an opportunity, but it probably needs to be taken advantage of soon. Do we have any additional comments or questions? If not, we'll go ahead and thank Valerie so much for your presentation today. Once again, we look forward to hearing more from you in the future because there's so much great work being done. And we're just so excited to think that this project is coming closer and closer to opening its doors and sharing the park and the art with the community. So very exciting updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Appreciate it.
All right, with that, I'm very excited to welcome our next presenters. We have Pam Augustine from Eastside Leads and Dana Pratt from the LA County Department of Consumer and Business Affairs. So we'll go ahead and ask Dana to take it away. Or Pam, I don't know exactly who's presenting, but I invite you both to the podium to speak. Hi, Dana.
Hi, thank you so much. Good morning. Good morning, Heather. Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for the invitation to present to your group today. And I, as Heather stated, I'm Dana Pratt. I'm the Deputy Director over Housing and Tenant Protections for the county DCBA, or Consumer and Business Affairs. And I'd like to give an update, a brief update on the LA County COVID-19 Tenant Protections Resolution, an overview of what is currently in place, as well as the recently passed AB 2179 and how that will impact our local protections. Next slide, please. And so I know that most of you are familiar that there are COVID-19 tenant protections throughout the county and also throughout the state. But I always like to start with just going over what's currently in place. And so what is it? It's a countywide ban on evictions for residential and commercial tenants impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And who's covered? So residential tenants, commercial tenants, as well as mobile home space renters. But I do want to make a special note that even though I'm mentioning all three categories of tenants or renters, that different provisions apply to different types of tenants. Not every single protection includes residential or commercial or mobile home space renters, and I'll go over that in a moment. And then the county's protections apply not just to the unincorporated areas, but also to the incorporated cities within the county, unless that city has similar or greater protections. And so one example, for the most part, is City of Los Angeles. And how long does it last? So this has been a moving target. This went into effect March 4th of 2020. And the current sunset date is the end of this year. So December 31st, 2022, unless it's extended or repealed by the Board of Supervisors. Next slide, please. And so I also wanted to spend a little bit of time going over what's currently in place. So in January, late January, January 5th, 25th to be exact, the Board of Supervisors once again took action to extend the COVID-19 tenant protections resolution, but this time they did it in 2 phases. And so the reason that it was done in this way was to try to be thoughtful and to extend these protections that are needed for our tenant households, but at the same time, understanding that things are changing and slowly phasing out some of these protections. And so the first phase, which is from February 1st of this year through May 31st, 2022, includes most of the same protections that you've seen. So where it's not preempted by the state, including the rent increase freeze. And so what that means is for unincorporated LA County only, rent stabilized units and mobile home spaces, there can't be any rent increases at the moment. That includes new pass-throughs or other related charges. It also includes some protection for evictions for a variety of reasons. So in no fault eviction reasons, except for qualified owner move-ins, nuisance, unauthorized occupants or pets, and also a reasonable denial of entry to a landlord. It also includes some anti-harassment and retaliation language, and that includes all residential mobile home space renters as well as commercial tenants. And for commercial tenants with 9 or fewer employees, it also includes a prohibition of enforcement of personal guarantees, meaning that you can't sue them individually for any of that rent that's incurred before January 31st of 2022. Now, we did recently make some updates to this chart just based on AB 2179, and I'll go over that. So we did add in the what's being added. Originally, we were planning in the county to include non-payment of rent protections because the state had preempted us through March 31st or yesterday. Because of AB 2179, we are preempted. And so we did update it to say no new protections were added. And then what's going away? Non-payment of rent eviction protections for commercial tenants did expire January 31st of this year because we were also preempted due to a lifting of one of the governor's executive orders. And then phase 2 spans from June 1st, 2022 to December 31st of 2022. And so what's staying the same? So much like phase 1, we still have the rent increase freeze for unincorporated LA County rent stabilized units. And we also have protections for no fault reasons, nuisance, and unauthorized occupants or pets. But you will see that certain things have lifted, will have lifted effective June 1st. And so one of those things is the denial of entry to the landlord. For owner move-ins, so as it stands currently, if an owner wants to move into their unit because they've purchased the property or they want to occupy the unit like as their own, their primary place of residence, they can move to evict their tenant, but there are additional restrictions. Starting June 1st, we will ease some of those restrictions. And so the purchase property date is one. Currently, you have to have purchased the property on or before June 30th of 2021. And so we'll be removing that. And that will allow for any property owners who may have purchased their properties recently to move in. We'll also be removing the requirement that tenants be financially impacted by COVID prior to the landlord moving in. And then what's being added effective July 1st, unless there's any further preemption, the evictions for non-payment of rent will kick in, but this will only be for households with incomes at or below 80% of the area median income. And that's due to a COVID-19 financial hardship. Next slide, please. And so again, I've alluded to AB 2179. This was signed yesterday by the governor. And so what it did is it extended some of the current state protections through June 30th, 2022. And so just at a high level, it included a 3-month extension of the court protections. And so it extends that requirement that landlords have to sign a declaration under penalty of perjury, stating that they've applied for rent relief prior to proceeding with an unlawful detainer or an eviction. That means that tenants who did apply by that deadline, which was yesterday, are provided what's called an affirmative defense against evictions if they applied for rent relief by that 3/31 deadline. In order for a landlord to be able to proceed with either getting a judgment or a default against their tenant, they have to have proof that that the application has already been denied or that their tenant hasn't participated in the program. But I would say, unfortunately, this also, which is a good thing for, for tenants, but unfortunately, it also included a 3-month extension of local preemption language. And so that's why I was saying that we had to go back and amend our chart so that you understand that, unfortunately, the county is preempted now from protecting tenants for non-payment of rent. And that's the earliest that we can reinstate that protection would be July 1st of this year. Next slide, please. And so again, how does it impact the county's resolution? So for commercial tenants, it doesn't have an impact because this only applies to residential tenancies. But for residential tenancies, what it did is preempt the county from implementing any non-payment of rent protections through June 30th. All of the other local protections offered will still remain in place. And so all of those other evictions that do not have to do with non-payment of rent will still be in place. It's just that until July 1st, we won't be able to protect for non-payment of rent. And next slide. So for I know that I just went over a lot of dense information pretty quickly. I wanted to make it high level just to not to not kind of belabor the point, but of course, I'm happy to answer any questions. If you have any tenants reaching out, they can reach us at 833-223-RENT or via email at rent@dcba.lacounty.gov, or you can visit us online at rent.lacounty.gov. And that concludes my update, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Dana. Really appreciate that thorough update. Do we have any questions? Oh, I see a hand raised from Greg.
Hi, Dana. Thanks for this update. Just sort of appreciate you turning this around so quickly. I know that the state law changed, yesterday, so that was a really quick turnaround. And I think a lot of us, the tenant advocates, are sort of grappling with what the consequences of this preemption will be, because those county protections were so crucial. Early in the pandemic, DCBA created a resource where you could check if your city had protections. Basically, it was a city by city thing. And that was the great thing about the county, is we didn't have to do that city by city analysis anymore. And the county had a nice uniform protection. But if we have to go back to that and sort of scouring all the city protections that were in place before August 20th, 2020, or August 19th, 2020, does basically, I'm wondering does DCBA already sort of have that resource that could be updated so that tenants know if their cities have non-pay protections that weren't preempted?
Yeah, hi, Greg. Thanks for that question. And I do understand. I know that we were keeping track of that. It had gotten really complicated and really time consuming, with the small team to be able to update it. But, and you're right, that was one of the great things about that action by the board to make our protections apply throughout the county, not just with unincorporated. I am currently working with the team as of yesterday to try to pin down any of the protections that were in place prior to August 19th. The city of LA, we know, is one of them. I believe that Beverly Hills was another, although I'm hearing that their protections are slated to end soon. But I'm hoping to have an update on that. I can't promise it's going to be today. But again, I know City of LA is probably the largest jurisdiction that does still have those protections in place for non-payment of rent. But I'll keep you updated.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dana. Additional questions for Dana? Do we have any comments or people want to share out about the program? Rosa.
Hi again, everyone. So just wanted to, again, just thank the county and the department for all of the great efforts. I know there's also been a lot of support from the state, particularly on rent relief. We have a milestone at the Wellness Center that we wanted to share with everyone, and that is that we have hit our $1 million mark for rent relief, and that is when we help families be able to apply for rent relief, right? We get a tally of how much has been already paid out to the community. So we're really excited to have hit our 1 million mark. I know Eastside Leads, I know Inner City Struggle, I know Alma, I know a lot of different partners are doing this work as well. And so I know that it's really going a long way for our community. And so appreciating, again, the department, the county, and everyone at the state who's been working on this, and all of the advocates, because it's really making a complete difference for our community. So Carmen is actually putting the actual number, which is 1,071,000. Really excited. Well, 72,000. Really exciting. And Carmen and that team has been working really, really hard. In some cases, these applications take, time over a few days, because our clients, our community members have to look for particular paperwork, right, that can satisfy that application. So thank you, team that is doing this work, for your patience and for your incredible efforts making it happen. So thank you, Dana.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I would echo those sentiments, like thank you to everyone on this call. And thank you and I wanted to also just give a shout out to our Stay Housed LA partners. This has been an incredible partnership. And so just wanting to remind everyone, and I'll drop the link in the chat, that these protections are going to be even more critical, like between our team at DCBA and also our Stay Housed CBO and LSP partners, that if you're seeing anyone that has that's receiving an eviction notice, it's going to be really important to connect them in the county with Stay Housed, because that's an incredible resource that's available to tenants. And so I'll leave you with that. And again, thank you so much for allowing me to share this information with you.
Great. Thank you again. Always exciting to kind of get these updates on things that are so critically important and of such high value to our community residents. So thank you, Dana. All right. Really appreciate everyone presenting on that. Next up, we are going to have a presentation about the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District from our colleagues at Cosmot Companies. I believe Felicia is going to be doing the presentation today. Is that right?
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much. I will introduce the presentation. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So just a quick reminder on this presentation. This is a Southern California Association of Governments grant that the county received. And we are working with, this is in conjunction with the LA County USC reuse feasibility study. We are evaluating special districts that could fund public infrastructure for the community. So we've been working with the first district diligently. It's great to be back here at the HICP. I'm going to turn it over to the main event, which one of the biggest components of this grant is the public outreach program. So I'm going to turn it over to the Sierra Group, who's going to go through the public outreach. Just a reminder, the time frame for this is we're doing the analysis from January until about October of this year. Where we will come out with the final recommendations for the to be part of the LA County USC reuse study. So I'll turn it over to the Sierra Group now, who will go over the public outreach process. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Felicia, and good morning, everyone. My name is Rebecca Barantes with the Sierra Group, and I'm joined today by Laura Santos, who's also on our outreach team for the EIFD. Our effort here, if you recall, the last time we came to the committee, you had an overview of the EIFD, and I gave an overview of our outreach process, which is kind of a 3-phase process. Our first phase being just explaining what an EIFD is, and also just how it relates to the LAC USC hospital reuse study. And in its most basic terms,
some of the stuff, the clutter that we don't know.
Hello? I'm here.
Sorry, we had someone unmuted, but it's all set now, Rebecca. Sorry about that interruption.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay, so I was a talking head.
It wasn't you. It wasn't you.
Okay. All right. Should I begin again or?
You're fine. Just you're welcome to continue. We just had a quick interruption as someone was unmuted by mistake.
Okay. Okay.
But you've been fine. We've been listening to you the whole time. It's all good.
Okay. Okay, cool. Thank you so much. Okay, so yeah, so in its simplest terms, you know, our outreach and this EIFD district is all about the hospital reuse study, and it's all about how we help to finance the community-driven vision for the reuse of General Hospital campus, the Healthy Village and affordable housing and other community benefit improvements, many of which you've been talking about for several months now, that could come to fruition because of a financing tool. And that's all that this is. So what we've done is we've really linked this outreach to that effort. And we are about ready to commence that effort with a whole series of meetings for the EIFD. And that starts this month, hopefully, with a focus group of the HICP EIFD subcommittee. And we're hoping to have that subcommittee formed soon and the contacts for that, so that we can begin to put together that focus group and begin the outreach process, really. Moving on from the focus groups, we also plan to have a couple of community meetings, and it's going to be really essential that we involve the steering committee for the hospital feasibility study, as well as any public participants in that process. So we want to have a focused community meeting just for that target audience, so that they can continue on with the vision and now looking at a way of financing. So it's really wonderful that following me, you'll have an update on the study. And we're looking for ways to collaborate with that process, so that we can just, again, seamlessly continue that conversation, now looking at a way of financing. Our second community meeting is going to be for the business and the community-based organizations that are in and around the hospital campus. And we're in the process of developing a stakeholder list of those individuals and organizations. So right now I'm going to ask my colleague, Laura Santos, to please put in the chat my name and her name and our emails, so that you may get in touch with us if you would like to receive more information, updates, and invitations to all of the meetings I'm speaking about. Okay, so moving on, we're going to repeat the cycle of learning and discussing about EFDs into May and June. In May, we're going to be having, as I said, the community meetings, but then we're also going to have a public workshop. And that's going to be later on in June. And that's going to be all communities, everyone involved, everyone who's participating, anyone who says they want to be involved, they can attend the public workshop. So that'll take us through this year pretty much. And then looking forward to 2023, when we come back with a more defined district, we'll be able to really talk about what are the boundaries, what are the potential infrastructure and community benefit improvements that can be financed with the district. We'll even be able to talk about the governing board, because it will have a separate governing board, a public finance oversight committee that will consist of both elected and publicly appointed members. So we have a lot of work to do in between now and next year, but the community process will all inform what that assessment district is going to be and what kind of infrastructure improvements we are going to consider within that district. So I welcome any questions, but again, please reach out to myself and Laura for more information, questions. If you'd like to be added to our list to receive notices and invitations to our community meetings, that would be great.
Thank you so much, Rebecca and Laura. So yes, open questions now for anyone at the HICP table to follow up on the next steps as it relates to the EIFD study and the public involvement. Do we have any questions? Greg?
Hi, sorry, I'm always asking questions. Do we know, I can't remember if is it sort of set out in the state statute, or is it something that would be part of the EIFD proposal, but do we know how the district would be governed? Is that sort of preordained by just the local governments that would be involved, or is that something that would, the proposed district could sort of create its own governance structure?
So I'll go ahead and answer that. So it is in the state legislation that the governing entities that form the EIFD are the ones who sit on the board. So for example, let's see, Laverne and the LA County formed a joint EIFD. That board is 5 members. It is 2 from the Laverne City Council, 1 county supervisor, and then 1 public member appointed by the county and the city. So that makes 5 members. So that is governed by the statute. It is generally the elected officials from the entity that forms the EIFD, and then public members that they appoint.
Okay, got it. But in this case, it wouldn't necessarily be all 5 supervisors and all 14 city council members.
Oh no, because that would be a quorum. then they could make other decisions that may affect something else.
Yeah.
So it would likely be, in this case, we are hoping to partner with the city of Los Angeles. So if the county formed this, it would be 2 members of the county board of supervisors, 1 public member appointed by them, 1 city council member from the city of Los Angeles, and 1 public member appointed by the city of LA. That's most likely how it would be.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Anything else?
Do we have any other questions? Okay, if not,
thank you.
Go, Rosa.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Comment again. Thank you, Felicia, for bringing us up to speed on this incredible opportunity and effort and describing the complexity of something like the EIFD. Just want to remind everyone, to Greg's point, like never, is there too many questions? Please continue to ask questions. Please continue to let us know where there might be interest in learning more. We know we're asking a lot of our community members. There's a lot of subcommittees, a lot of meetings, right? So we want to make sure that you identify those meetings that are most important to you. And given that this process is a bit more formal, as Felicia described, we just want to make sure that we go over what that commitment looks like so that Felicia and her team will be, very well positioned to move forward, right, with the group, with the subcommittee. So I see you're bringing up the members that you already have participating. But again, if you are interested in any part of this process, have not been involved yet, please let us know. Send us your name and email, and we will track it and get back to you. And I see a comment from Guadalupe.
Yes, Guadalupe is chiming in to say, we do want to ensure anyone interested can please join the subcommittee. So go ahead and add your name and email address in the chat, and we'll be sure to include you and update you on the opportunity and the responsibilities, like Rosa said, because it's a little more significant commitment. But it's an exciting opportunity to really, be present in one of these very rich conversations about things that are happening on our east side. So if you're interested, please put your information in the chat and we will include you and be in touch. So with that, and just to mention, the people that have already raised their hand at a prior meeting include Monica Alcaraz, Pam Augustine, Greg Bonet, Maria Brenes, and Ari Gutierrez Arambola. But we'd love to add to their numbers. With that, if there are no additional questions, I'll go ahead and thank Felicia, Rebecca, and Laura for joining us today. And of course, we look forward to hearing from you in the future and for participation from HICP members in your various subcommittees and public outreach efforts.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. All right. With that, next up, we are inviting our colleague Erica Gutierrez from the Department of Regional Planning to share with us the Metro Area Plan update. Erica, welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. I'm excited to be here, and I'm representing the Department of Regional Planning today, talking a little bit about the Metro Area Plan. I wasn't sure where we left off last time that I was here, so I am going to kind of set this up in a way, excuse me, to give a brief overview of the Metro Area Plan and then some of the proposed policy ideas that we're working on, and then an update on our community outreach. So next slide, please. Thank you. So I'll start with an overview of the Metro Area Plan. And I'm sorry if you're hearing this again, but the project focuses on, 7 unincorporated communities of Los Angeles County, including East Los Angeles, East Rancho Dominguez, Florence Firestone, Walnut Park, West Rancho Dominguez Victoria, West Athens, Westmont, and Willowbrook. Next slide, please. One more slide, sorry. Thank you. And so here's a map of the communities. And as you can see, it's basically like the urban core of Los Angeles County. And collectively, these 7 communities are referred to as the Metro Planning Area, which is one of the county's 11 planning areas identified in the general plan. So the next slide shows that, the primary goals, overarching goals of the Metro Area Plan. Firstly, we want to kind of streamline some of the existing policies. It's been years since many of those have been updated, and sometimes, excuse me, they overlap. So we're looking to kind of streamline this. We're, of course, prioritizing equity and environmental justice. We are encouraging development of new green spaces and recreational facilities. We're also implementing zoning recommendations, particularly from the housing element update, with a focus on addressing affordable housing needs. And we're also looking to facilitate employment through neighborhood commercial opportunities and a transition to clean industrial and life science facilities in the industrial areas. So the next slide kind of covers a little bit of what I just said. I won't go into too much detail, but basically it's a land use plan where the policy issues will be focused on the metro planning area. And it'll kind of be an overarching area plan, but then there will be some policies and concepts very specific to the 7 communities that I mentioned earlier. And for example, the Florence Firestone Community Plan, which is really just getting passed now, will also be sort of folded into the Metro Area Plan, and it'll kind of be like the umbrella plan that sort of holds everything together. As I said before, it's going to implement the rezoning that's proposed through the housing element update. And it's also subject to CEQA, and we've already commenced the CEQA process. So now I'm going to go over some of the proposed policy ideas, and I'm going to focus on 5 of them. And so the first one is, this idea of accessory commercial units. It's actually not a new idea. This type of zoning was very common before what's referred to as modern Euclidean zoning today, which encouraged the separation of commercial and residential uses. So we're actually looking at what we're referring to as ACUs, or accessory commercial units now, where you could have like a primary residential structure with a smaller commercial use attached. These types of uses are actually already present throughout the county, but they're considered non-conforming. And so we're looking for a way to formalize and legalize some of these non-conforming uses. And this is also based on outreach that we've gotten from the community, that there's a lack of local retail and restaurants that are within walking distance of residential neighborhoods. So we believe that allowing these types of smaller retail uses, accessory retail uses, can help introduce small local serving commercial uses and respond to the demand for services within the community. That being said, the impact of this is not expected to be very large. It's sort of, we're looking right now at corner lots, allowing this on corner lots only to sort of maintain the integrity of the commercial corridors throughout the communities, as well as to maintain the integrity of the residential neighborhoods. So Another policy idea that we're looking at is industrial rezoning. So there are industrial uses present in West Rancho Dominguez, East Los Angeles, Willowbrook, and Florence Firestone, and we have received concerns in our outreach about industrial uses next to residential uses, and a desire from community members to have cleaner to have cleaner neighborhoods and neighbors. So we see this as an opportunity to attract and facilitate cleaner tech and research uses, and also to potentially expand on and build on some of the work that was done as part of the Green Zones program, if anyone's aware of that. Green alleyways. This next proposal, or this, I guess, third proposal of green alleyways is something that we are also looking at to see how we can better foster this throughout the county. We are looking at successful pilot projects, such as one that was done in Willowbrook, and also working with Los Angeles Public Works to learn more about some of the work they've already done on this in terms of locating potential sites throughout the entire county for feasibility of green alleyways. So the potential, and basically we want to try to, again, find ways to support this type of development and to raise awareness about the benefits of green alleyways, including activating green spaces and otherwise areas that are derelict or underutilized, like alleyways. They're also helpful for deterring crime, and infrastructure, in terms of infrastructure, they help with water runoff and stormwater management. So
Erica, I have a quick question about these green alleyways. Yeah. They're this particular visual is so beautiful. Are these meant as pedestrian and bike thoroughfares, or are motor vehicles permitted as well?
No, it would be bike and pedestrian. Yeah. And I think motor vehicles, I think they can carry the weight, but it would be just more for like maybe maintenance, but it's not a street for cars.
Thank you.
Okay, so food trucks and street vending. This is another, I guess, policy area that we've been looking at. We've heard many things from the community about food trucks and about street vending, and we see it as part of the cultural fabric, but we also want to acknowledge that there's a tension there between these types of uses, and we've heard about encroachment issues with noise, there are food safety issues, so it's very complex, and there's also a lot of relevant state law that's attached to this issue. So we've been kind of collaborating with public health on this, but I think what we've sort of honed in on is a way to allow smaller food operators on private property, like in a type of food truck court. So this isn't something that we would try to further foster in the public right of way, because regional planning really mostly deals with private property. So we have to partner with public health and public works for other kind of, for things in the public right of way. But in terms of what role we can have to foster these uses is making it easier and having some type of process for food trucks to be allowed to operate on private property more easily. So that's kind of what we're focusing on. And then finally, another kind of policy area that we're looking at is this idea of freeway caps. This is also not a new idea. There have been several proposed in the Los Angeles, the greater Los Angeles area. So we're looking at those as part of our research. Like this is something obviously that would require buy-in from various, from Caltrans, from Metro, from the communities themselves, of course. But this is meant to, these freeway caps are basically parks that are placed over freeways where possible. And they're meant to, the intent is to reverse some of the negative impacts of freeways. So right now, we've looked at a few areas where this might be possible, but it's still very conceptual. And we're sort of in the spot where we're basically also just looking for potential funding mostly from new federal grant opportunities from the infrastructure bill that was recently passed, that focus on these types of projects that would be, reconnecting communities is sort of what the program is called. So those grants are not available yet, but we're monitoring them, and we're hoping that we can incorporate this component of the project more so. It's not something that we would obviously implement right away, but something that we would just start to do feasibility studies on. And the final part of my presentation. Yes,
Before
go
we
ahead.
continue, Erica, we have a couple questions about the street vending issue. Ruby asks for clarification. Is this just about truck-based vendors as opposed to street vendors? As she's saying, is it only food trucks, or are street vendors included in this potential opportunity?
Right now, we've basically been looking at everything. The food court idea that I mentioned is more focused on food trucks, but we have been we're staying abreast of recent. There was a recent proposal to Senate Bill 972 that has to do more with street vendors, mobile street vendors, and compact mobile food facilities. So we are also looking into that and talking to public health about some of these proposed changes in state law. Yeah, for the most part, we have been focused on food trucks, but I do add street vending because we are, considering, the options that we will have for that. I think the problem that we had up to date is that there is no pathway for legalization of street vending per state law. So we kind of were at a standstill there, but we're kind of staying abreast of some of the changes that might be in the pipeline. And, street vending may be part of something that we include in the plan, but for the most part, we have been focusing on food trucks.
I see. And there was a question about connecting to the LA Street Vendor campaign, and it sounds like something that you'd like, that's in the wish list and the forward thinking list, but maybe isn't happening yet.
I think we are aware of a few organizations, and we are, we've been talking to public health, and I think we are initiating some kind of, outreach with some of these organizations.
Thank you. And are you aware, you mentioned that there's some limitations based upon state law related to street vending. Are you aware of any, initiatives to kind of address that inequity?
Yes.
It's a little beyond your scope in the Department of Regional Planning. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I did mention it just briefly, but there has been a recent proposal in state law. So we're watching it. I can't remember. I think it was one of the senators just proposed something. I could probably, find out more, but we are it's Senator Gonzalez just proposed some changes to, Senate Bill 972. So we've been, keeping up on that. I don't know if that answers the question.
Thank you. I think it's helpful information. We have a hand raised from Greg, and we do have several other questions in the chat, but I'll have Greg kick it off, and then we can move to some of the questions about the freeway caps. Greg.
Yeah, and sorry, this is just more on the vending issue. Yeah, I definitely encourage you to connect with the street vending campaign. There are some barriers in the retail food code to vendors getting their public health permits, and there's a lot of efforts to reduce those barriers. But it doesn't feel like in a land use document that lots and lots of people make their living as street vendors, and it's an important use of public space. So I guess I would really hope that you don't sort of close off opportunities for vendors just because there are barriers to accessing health permits, and the barriers that are actively being addressed right now. This land use plan will likely be in effect for many years to come, and even if the health code isn't amended this year, it could be next year. It could be amended. So street vendors have been working in these neighborhoods for many decades, and they'll continue to work here. So I hope the land use standards will be designed to support them.
Yes, so that's why I think our focus has been on finding creative ways that we've looked at models that have been done in other in other jurisdictions and other cities where they have these types of like food, and I don't have the images for it, but they have like food courts where there's several food trucks and possibly street vendors who can kind of set up, and it's sort of providing more space for them to operate. And I think that's kind of what we're looking at. So as I said before, yeah, so for as a land use policy document, we don't really focus on the public right of way, but we're looking at ways to allow for these uses to be permitted on private property more so. And another thing that we're looking at that I didn't mention before is just, these food trucks require contracts with commissary spaces, and that's something that actually is not defined in our code right now. So we're actually also looking to, provide a better definition of commissary space so that it's, again, formalized, and so that we can also, through our department, reduce the obstacles that they have in permitting in some of these uses.
Thank you. Alex.
I just wanted to make a comment about the establishment of these guidelines, and I would hope that they wouldn't lessen any. I would hope that they wouldn't lessen anything that would maintain health, security, and anything else that we rely on in food preparation that the community is already accustomed to. So I know that it's a very delicate situation, but is there any protocol that would be, what is the protocol that would be maintained for the preparation of food for brick and mortar versus street vendors?
Yeah, so very good question, but definitely outside the realm of what we do in regional planning. This is why we're kind of working with public health on this, because public health really is kind of the agency that monitors food safety. So I will just say this, we will not deal with that type of kind of like, we would not deal with that type of food safety permitting. That would be public health. So I can't really answer the question, but I can say that for certain, food safety is top priority for public health. And I don't think there's anything in the works to lessen that. But I would encourage everyone to, go to Google, or not Google, but, look into California State Senate Bill 972. And if you're not aware of the California, I think it's, someone mentioned it early, kind of California food retail, I can't even remember the name of it, but it's the code that regulates like cottage foods, cottage food operations. There's a lot in there, and there's definitely this tension between food safety, but then allowing operators to sell the food that's created in their homes through carts, right? Through street vending. So, but again, that's not something that we would look at directly within this project or within our department.
Okay, in terms of your jurisdictions, my apologies, I guess that was a poor framing of it, but in terms of your jurisdictions, what are the measures that that regional planning is using towards maintaining these health and security concerns?
We would just basically look at including the use of commissary space within our code, so that someone could come in and say, I want to, have commissary space in my on my property, and then they would have to submit a site plan, and then we would review the site plan. And then after that, they would then go to public health and get whatever permits they need from public health. That's kind of how the process works.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Erica. Lots of excitement around this issue, as we can tell. And we do have a comment from Vivian Escalante as well, just talking about that need for, for planning and enforcement of plans, so that street vending doesn't take over in spaces that it isn't as accommodating, and may interfere with other rights of way kind of issues. So pivoting now, we have a couple questions about the freeway cap green space. There's a question from Ari about what is the vision for the 710 stub in Alhambra relating to freeway cap?
Yeah, so let's see here. We had one kind of conceptual proposal for something off the 710. I think it was off near the 10 actually. And there are and I can actually, we can come back and do a more thorough presentation just on the freeway caps. But I will say that like most of the areas that our consultants looked at had some kind of limitation in terms of where they could go. We did also meet with Metro, regarding, they're actually looking for projects to fund as well through some of the work that they're doing along the 710 corridor, but their funding basically only goes from the 60 down south. So, so I guess to answer your question, we don't have anything concretely yet for that area. And again, this is all very conceptual. But I have heard of more ideas of potential projects kind of further south along the 710.
Thank you, Erica. For my own information, I haven't heard of freeway caps before. Is it something that's been successfully deployed elsewhere in the country or internationally?
Yeah, there are successful examples. I think one of the big ones that was more successful recently is was in like Glendale, La Cañada. There was a freeway cap that's there, and it's basically, like I said, like a sort of a small park that's just placed where the freeway goes under, and so that you could just kind of create infrastructure that goes over, almost like a bridge. And I'm sorry that I don't have better visuals, so I'm kind of trying to explain it. Yeah, there's definitely like one that I know of, and then the others that I mentioned is just other projects like this one. One's proposed in Hollywood. There are a lot of kind of ideas about freeway caps, but it seems like most of them are kind of stuck in the conceptual phase because it's a huge deal with funding these types of projects and just getting like, the political, everything to align to sort of help support these, and not to mention, like I just said, feasibility of these types of projects. But the one that we looked at as a good example of something that was recently done was in Glendale, La Cañada. And I think I might have included it in a prior presentation. But yeah, so those are kind of what we're looking at. And there have been others, obviously, in other parts, but that's the closest one to this area.
Great, thank you. An additional question, would a freeway cap include green space and or bike space? Is it more of a set park, or is it kind of a thoroughfare for pedestrians and bikes?
It would include green space, possibly bike space. Bike space, there was also a separate idea. It wasn't so much a freeway cap, but another idea related to this is more just like greenways along, which would be bike paths along the freeways. But a freeway cap wouldn't necessarily have bike paths, but it would just be more of like a park with, trails and other kind of amenities on the park.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we're down to our final question. There's a question here about industrial, the rezoning of industrial uses. How does that impact existing developments along the industrial corridors?
We already have green zones that's going into effect this summer, and so that will impact industrial uses. And so many industrial uses will be subject to schedule compliance, so that's part of green zones. But for the metro area plan, non-conforming uses, if uses are rendered non-conforming through some kind of rezoning, usually they just have to then comply with what's called our non-conforming section of the code, and then usually they're allowed to stay for like a certain number of years before they're like phased out, basically. But what I will say is that in the county has been very generous in terms of the timing that it gives existing uses, as long as there are no changes or expansions to those uses.
Great, thank you. Okay, we'll move on in our presentation. Thank you for the stop to answer all of our questions. I think we're here at the community outreach piece.
Okay, good. And I know that I don't want to go over the time, but yeah, so the community outreach is the last part of my presentation. And so I do have a timeline here. We have two major phases planned for the outreach. The first phase happened last fall, and that was mostly virtual. The next phase will take place this summer. And then shortly thereafter, we will release the draft plan and EIR. So we plan to release the draft plan and EIR after our next phase of outreach in September and October. But we have tried to make our outreach as, multifaceted as possible, partnering with community-based organizations, and we've also created a community advisory committee. And so far we've held over 20 meetings with members of the public to discuss the metro area plan. So on the next slide, you'll just see an overview of the workshops that we held in the fall. And again, this was mostly virtual, but we had about 157 attendees, mostly from East Los Angeles and Florence Firestone, with 8 workshops in all. And in the fall, we did also partner with public health. So we did have some in-person events, and those were held at local parks in East Los Angeles and West Rancho Dominguez. And then we also did have more outreach earlier this year in January and February for the historic resources component of the project. And that's another component that I haven't talked about yet, but it's kind of unprecedented, but we're also having a historic resources context statement and a survey for Florence Firestone that's part of the metro area plan. So we're doing separate community outreach for that. And the community advisory committee, just wanted to mention that, it's comprised of local leaders who live and represent the metro area plan communities. And right now we have about 15 members. And we've had 8 meetings so far. And Heather, sorry, this is the next slide. And let's see here. We've had about, I think, 3 meetings so far, and so we'll have several left. I think the next meeting is in April. And then aside from the community advisory committee, we do also have a technical advisory committee, and that's where I mentioned that we work with departments of like public health and public work to review and collaborate on a lot of these ideas and policies. Okay. The next slide is about community organizations. So I said we have been working closely with community organizations where possible. We've presented at groups like here, HICP, Vision City Terrace, East Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce, East Los Angeles Community Advisory Committee, and then the East Yard Communities for Environmental Justice was involved in our community outreach in the fall. And we've reached out to other organizations to see if they're willing to coordinate with us, but I think we also have kind of sense that there's there's fatigue, I guess, from CBOs. There's just so being pulled in many directions. But I will say that we've done our best to sort of engage various groups in our process. And then finally, we have a website and a newsletter and social media. I say this because the website's a very great resource. So I encourage everyone to go onto our website and kind of, look over everything that's there. That's where we have the historic resources mapping tool. We have information about all of the 7 communities. We have videos from prior meetings, minutes. There's a lot of information on there, and you can also sign up for our newsletter. And that's basically it. So again, my name's Erika Gutierrez, and I am with the Department of Regional Planning. And you can email me at, I'll put my email in the chat, but I'm actually I Metro Area Plan at planning.lacounty.gov. That's also my email. And I'll put my personal work email in the chat as well. Thank you. And if there are any other questions, I'm available.
Yeah, thanks so much. Do we have additional questions for Erica about anything related to the metro area plan? Nope, I guess not. All right. Well, thank you, Erica, again for joining us and giving us continued updates. It's a lot of exciting things are happening. And it's really great to see some of these new opportunities coming forward that provide really wonderful community benefits. We had a comment in the chat from Vivian saying, loving the concept of the green alleys and hoping to see more things like that in the areas where it's appropriate. But just a lot of exciting information. So we really appreciate you.
We hope so too. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you everyone for all your questions and engagement. We basically, this is the type of feedback we need to make it a better plan. So thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thanks again. All right. Well, with that, I am delighted to turn over the microphone to my colleague Alex Villalobos to kick us off with conversations about the General Hospital General Hospital and West Campus feasibility study. So, Alex.
Hi, good morning, fellow HICP members and everyone joining us this morning. Thank you, and thank you for sharing your time and for this opportunity for me to provide an update on the progress of our study. As we have shared, the study continues, has made great progress and exciting developments, and continues to engage as we continue to engage with community leaders as we move forward into the RFP phase, having worked closely with the community to see it come to fruition. So thank you so much for being here and allowing me. I would like to now ask Doug Cohen with the LA County Department of Workforce Development, Aging and Community Services to bring us an update on the RFP process as it is related to this study. Doug.
Thank you, Alex, and good morning, HICP. Thank you, Heather and Rosa, for the opportunity to provide the community this update on the RFP process. So the RFP process, first I'm going to back up. Just so everybody is acquainted, the request for proposal is the process by which a developer would eventually be selected for the development of the project site. The feasibility study that Alex just mentioned is a very significant process that is underway, has been underway. You're familiar with that. And at the conclusion of that process, the board is initiating the actual process to go forward with the development. And the first step of that would be to select a developer. And the selection of the developer is a competitive process. The RFP is what establishes that competitive process. And so it's a pretty significant component of delivering the project that we're all here to talk about. In the discussions that we've had to date, several questions have started to formulate. And one of them right off the bat here is, how much opportunity will HICP and related groups such as the CESC and generally the community have to shape the RFP? The input that's been going forward over the last many months as part of the feasibility assessment is integral to the actual basis upon which the requirements of the RFP for the developers to respond to are going to be based in that. So the input that you've been providing all along is going to be built into the requirements in the RFP. The RFP itself, though, will be a public document, and upon the actual posting of the RFP, obviously HICP will have a full access to it. Currently, what we're doing, though, is the RFP process. We have not actually initiated the consultants that will assist us in creating the drafting of the RFP. And when we launch that process in the next couple of weeks, one of the things that we're going to be incorporating is a way to bring about HICP or related community input into the actual selection process. And so what we're moving from is not just the requirements that the developers will have to respond to, but also the selection process. Once those developers have put together their proposals to be assessed and to be evaluated so that one proposer would be selected over the others in a competitive environment, we're looking at ways for HICP or related community input members to be part of that selection process. Another area of questions that we've encountered are about just the local hiring goals, and absolutely local and targeted hiring goals will be a requirement of the RFP. This is an example of the requirements that we have the ability to build into the RFP. And again, when we talk about requirements, these are elements that the developers who wish to be selected for this, who are competing for the selection, they have to respond to this. It's not an alternative element for their proposal to respond to. They have to respond to these requirements. Will there be only one developer is an area of discussion that oftentimes comes up. This is a public-private partnership. And it is not, that differs from a public works process. In a public-private partnership, we have the ability to structure the overall development in a way that can obligate a single entity. And there's a great value to the county and to the public in doing so. There are a series of promises made, and those promises can be enforced to a single entity. Now, that single entity with respect to this development site is obviously going to be a massive concern. There would be most likely in this type of structure, you'll have subordinate agreements. In other words, additional subcontracted developers that might participate in the affordable housing component, that might separately a subcontracted developer would be engaged in the commercial element. And we can advance to the next slide if you'd like. Thank you, Heather. In going down the list of questions that we have encountered from recent meetings, one of the questions is about the feasibility study, but most importantly, the RFP. And we oftentimes, when we talk about the discussion of, can it be prescriptive? And what we're talking about there is where we design, how much can we design this and then just ask some developer to come up and compete for the design. And to some degree, one of the values of a public-private partnership is you're actually having the private sector compete with their cost efficiencies in both design, which is quality, and also the cost of construction, and quite frankly, their cost of debt. What we're hoping to do is to have the private sector compete in such a way where we leverage all of those three efficiencies so that we unlock the value of our public sector assets in a way that would not be available to us to leverage if it was a public works project. So in terms of being prescriptive, what we're really looking to do is to allow enough latitude, build in the requirements that we need, but build in enough latitude so that the private sector in a competitive environment is competing to essentially leverage their efficiencies in three significant areas: quality, the cost of construction, which actually affects the revenue streams available to the county, and then also the timeline. What level of obligations and commitments in the shortest period of time will they deliver the various significant phases of the development? So that's what we're hoping to do in a public-private partnership type of RFP. Can we leverage creativity and cost efficiency while upholding the amount of housing? The RFP is going to have a significant component built around a very aggressive affordable housing component. So when I say aggressive, this is an area where we're putting into the RFP a significant requirement that the developers respond to as great an amount of affordability and essentially the most amount of units at the least amount of rent. And that is an area that we are going to focus on in the creation of, in drafting of the RFP. You can go ahead and advance to the next slide if you'd like. Thank you.
Before we do that, Doug, we have a couple questions in the chat that are really responsive about the RFP itself.
Sure.
We have a question from Pamela asking, will the RFP state all of the requirements of the county's community benefit policy? It would be great for competing developers not just to meet, but to exceed the community benefits requirements in their proposals.
So there's a significant component, great question. So there's a significant component, let me back up. In the RFP process, the developers are going to have to respond to various areas in their proposals. One of those areas will be a community benefits assessment. They're going to have components within that. That's almost an umbrella element. And it's essentially specifically addressing the community input. And so what's going to happen is when you talk about meet or exceeds, this is where the developers will have an entire section in which they know they are being evaluated in a competitive environment upon just that, how well they can exceed the community benefits assessment area. So in terms of community benefit, project labor agreements, things of this nature, the actual outreach plan that would be post-developer selection, maintaining, in other words, the promises that they've made. These are all areas that would be in a single area of evaluation and assessment as part of the RFP process.
Thank you. Another question here. How can this project tap into the biotech industry? That is, how does the building upgrade need to be designed to accommodate this type of industry as a way of paying for the affordable housing portion of the project?
Wow, great question. So, you know, we're in the shadow of a biotech corridor that was identified years back, plenty of studies and support, the Whiteside area. You've got a great local company. It's one of them. It's actually a global leader in plasma development, Grifols. You know, homegrown company right there in the shadows of this site. And so this is absolutely an area where we have the site itself, which is the hospital and which is the West Campus. And we're looking at, you know, providing a very aggressive affordable housing component within that, some commercial. However, we also are recognizing that we're in the shadow of what is essentially a fantastic corridor for bioscience. So the elements within the RFP will build into that. And again, these aren't requirements, but these are going to be areas in which the developers are going to compete for how well they can tie in elements that are available to the surrounding areas. We've got the possibility of an opportunity zones. And how does that affect? And how does that affect it become a magnet or the EIFDs? How does that affect it become a magnet that the developers for the hospital and West Campus can include in their RFP? The idea is for the developers to provide in their response something that is of greater latitude than just simply providing affordable housing within the footprint. We recognize that we have to build, you know, a regional economic development opportunity wherever possible, and we will build that into the RFP as a platform for the developers to respond to.
What a perfect segue to our next question, which is there a target related to affordable housing? And they say, and the question relates to like numbers, percentages. I'm not sure if that means numbers of units or percentages of units or percentages of affordability, but there's just a question, I guess, in general is like, are there targets that will be specific in the RFP related to affordable housing?
So, you know, the target is, you know, the target, I don't want to say yes to the word target, okay? The developers will have, we will be providing through exhibits that are a component to the RFP, scenarios that are setting the expectations that the county has. The county will certainly be stating what its expectations are for not, again, just the units of affordable housing, but again, the most amount of affordable units at the lowest rent. The developers will be competing on how they're going to deliver that. So not only will they be competing on the number of units and the number of units at the lowest rent, but on a believable scenario about how they're going to deliver on those promises.
Thank you. Yes, there was a follow-on question related to kind of a comment question related to the use of Section 8 vouchers for people who would be living in the affordable housing units, mentioning, of course, that there's a limitation that Section 8 is only available to documented residents. So is there something that might be done through this process to to subsidize, the affordable units even, so that to create a greater opportunity for undocumented individuals to occupy the units.
Well, so one of the areas of drafting the RFP in drafting the RFP, we'll be bringing in our county partners. And one of the county partners that we'll be working closely with in drafting the RFP to address this question is our partners over at the County Development Authority, which is the Los Angeles County Development Authority, is the housing authority. And they would be opining and providing areas of expertise on the use of vouchers.
Sounds good. There was also a question from Vivian. I think it relates to actually applications for tenancy to the facility, but saying, is there a process for people who do not qualify for affordable housing who are unable to find single units or one bedrooms in the area? So I don't know that we're at that stage yet of understanding, how people might apply for, or what the application process, or like who would be eligible to become tenants of the new facility. I don't know if you have
this is an area where we again defer to our county partners.
Sounds right. Okay, let's see if there's any additional questions before we move on. There's a question: will the lowest rental cost units exclude parking or include parking? Is there a sense of how parking might be allocated out through the as it pertains to housing units plus parking?
Well, a great question, but it's actually a bigger question than just that. How this entire site and the significant areas of this entire site are going to be parked is part of an area of assessment. So, one of the things that we're looking at in current projects, not just this project, is, can we rely on last mile e-mobility elements? And yet at the other end of the spectrum on that conversation, do we really want to burden affordable units with something that's less than a direct access to the units? So we would love, the conversations are being built into projects currently that bring in that last mile of mobility. But at the end of the day, which creates a greater element of green spaces and walking paths. But at the end of the day, we've got to be able to provide direct access to these units.
And I know parking is bigger than just the housing complications as well, because of course there'll be multiple uses on the site. As someone who works at the campus already, we know that there's parking challenges for staff who are currently at the medical center. So we know that parking is always a critical concern. And of course, we want to encourage green transportation modes, but at the end of the day, a lot of people still have cars that we need to take care of too. So I think that takes care of the questions in the chat thus far. So Doug, I'll let you continue forward with your presentation.
Okay, let's see, I think we're on. Okay, so thank you, Heather. Questions have been raised about the opportunity for community engagement. You know what, Heather, I'm going to ask you, can you advance to the very next slide in answering this question? So there's 3 points of contact where we're going to be bringing in community input into this process, and each one's significant. We're drafting the RFP. Now, drafting the RFP does not mean posting the RFP. Drafting the RFP means we draft the RFP and then we sit back and we sit amongst ourselves here in the county and we take a look at what do we have and how do we refine this before we post it. And at that point where we're refining it, that's where we can bring in HICP or community input into that process. So we'll draft the RFP, basically get everything formatted, and then we can take a step back. The district office has been fantastic supporter of the timelines associated with this. And we're going to be able to fine tune the draft prior to posting with the community input. That's significant. The second part, which is also something that I really needs to be appreciated. It's because it hasn't been part of other public-private partnership offerings, is once the posting of the RFP occurs, the developers will then start to build their responses. Those responses will have a due date. And when that due date comes in and the responses are checked in and we have the eligible members of the proposer groups being selected for actual evaluation and selection, in the evaluation process, as I had mentioned just previously, we're going to be bringing in a subcomponent of HICP to provide a recommendation to the actual evaluation panel on the community benefits assessment. So let me back up here. Community benefits assessment is the umbrella area, it's the umbrella section of the entire RFP response by all the developers. And in that community benefits assessment, we'll have a subcommittee, a panel of that's basically provided by HICP, and they will be reviewing that CBA, and they will be providing a recommendation to the actual evaluation panel that votes on and selects the developer. So that recommendation is going to be, that's a significant area of input that the HICP is going to have during the selection of the developer. And that's something that, quite frankly, we haven't done that before. The third area is post-selection. And this is where I say a developer is selected on their promises. And then our job is to enforce the capacity to make them maintain their promises. One of the key areas, that's one of the very first things out of the box post-selection, you've selected the developer now, is their outreach plan, their outreach plan, which leads to the project description, which is the actual application for the project that they're trying to get permits to build. So there's a component here where they actually, it's a document. Their outreach plan is how the developer is going to be engaging with the community to build upon the community input that the developer built into their promise of how they were going to actually develop the site. HICP will be able to be part of that outreach plan. And we're developing the role for HICP or a sub-panel of how that role can, the roles and responsibilities in that area. So basically in three significant areas, during the refinement of the draft of the RFP, prior to the posting of the actual RFP process, we'll have HICP or a sub-panel involved in the fine tuning. We'll then have HICP or a sub-panel part of a recommendation of a significant part of the developer's response, which is the community benefits assessment. And then post-developer selection, we'll have a sub-panel of HICP as part of the developer's outreach plan. And then I see that there's a last question here. In future phases, so breaking down those three areas. When we're finalizing the RFP, we're actually going to have site walks, is what you can think of it. We call it industry days, but we want to be able to, this is before the RFP is finalized. We're actually going to have an opportunity for the developer community to start to have discussions about this. And it would be great for HICP or a sub-panel to be part of a Q&A. So again, establishing that Q&A component, that platform for not just a meet and greet, but quite frankly, a pretty well-defined series of questions and answers from the development community will give HICP the capacity to set the tone for community outreach.
Great, thank you so much, Doug. So let's see. We have a question here from Pam. Can the RFP consider post-developer development agreements, like local hire for permanent positions? So I guess the idea is post the construction phase. I'm interpreting from you, Pam, if you want to ask your question directly. But we're running into this with the restorative care village too right now, where it's like there was a local and targeted hire component in the construction phase, but then in the operations phase, will there be local hire opportunities, or is that specified at all in the RFP process, or is that a future process?
So I don't know if you're waiting for Pam to ask the question directly, or you want me to just.
Nope, I think she said I got it. So
yeah,
okay.
She got it, Doug. But yeah, just adding my voice here. Just exactly for the reasons that Heather shared. I think it was perhaps not a full missed opportunity with the restorative care village, but I think this partnership did so much intentional work to get a best effort for restorative care village. And so I wonder if we need to start thinking about this process just as early as this process when we think about permanent job opportunities.
Yeah, so I actually work for WEDAX, okay, which that's not just economic development, but it's also workforce development. And you know, a key area of discussions that we're having is, and I'm a real advocate for this, is how we can go beyond just preferences, but actually into carve-outs, specific mandates, if you will. And this has to do with legitimately with the operations and maintenance, which is post-delivery. So you've got construction jobs, that's great. But you've got the operations and maintenance of a completed project. And it's in the operations and maintenance where I believe we're going to find some a real opportunity to engage in the workforce development programs. So the more we can build in, the answer to your question is yes. We're looking at building in a programmatic side wherever it is possible. And I believe where we're going to find that possibility is in the operations and maintenance side. And I'll go one more step. A developer typically, and this is our job on the RFP, we can go to this side, we can go to this extent. Public-private partnerships are design, build, and then somebody's going to own it. The operations and the maintenance, and there's literally a term, DBOM. And so what we're actually talking about is building into the RFP process structure of the deal that would include the operations and maintenance. And it's in the operations and maintenance that I think your question is going to actually get the answer yes that we hope to have. I believe that's where the programmatic side is going to be able to be unveiled.
Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. I think that might be everything as it pertains to RFP questions. So we are a little bit past time, but I'm going to ask my colleague Alex to walk us through the next few slides so we can wrap up in the next few minutes. Alex, take it away. And thank you so much, Doug, for being with us today. And we expect to see your smiling face back with us many times in the future. Very exciting updates and very exciting opportunities for HICP's participation in a going forward role.
Thank you.
Alex.
Great. Thanks so much, everybody. And Doug, thank you. It's great to know that there's such comprehensive efforts, even moving beyond the study and RFP process. Thank you for that. So now let's move on. Let's see, I'm sure you're all familiar with this slide on the General Hospital Feasibility Study process. So we are getting closer and closer to the end of the study phase of the project. So you can see we are here in the process just before our study is presented to the Board of Supervisors. And as Doug just shared, there are still many exciting opportunities ahead, and we're eager to finalize the study so that we can move forward into the next phases. And as Doug reassured all of us that there's a comprehensive effort into moving forward with this process that is involving the community's interests in mind. So we'd like to share with you a preview of the elements of the study report that will be submitted to the Board of Supervisors at the end of the month, this month, as well as responses to some of the questions asked at some of our engagements. So what is this? What does the study look like? What will it include? So the study will include the board motion and the healthy village concept, as well as the study process, which includes community input and technical analysis, the existing conditions of the facilities and the campus, and the market research as it relates to the project, the reuse framework, including key considerations from the community and the county, and the identified potential funding sources. What, if anything, the next question is that we received is what, if anything, is closed or lost for community influence once the feasibility study closes? Well, the community's priorities will be captured in this feasibility study. So completing the study allows the project to move to the next phase one step closer to providing needed community benefits and resources. The process is ongoing with opportunities for community engagement and participation along the way, including the next RFP phase. What elements of the study, such as market analysis, will be shared with the community? So when the study is provided, I like to hone to these direct answers so we can share these and be on the same page with all of them. So I'll just go through them. When the study is provided with the Board of Supervisors, it becomes a public document, and therefore all components of the study, including the market analysis, will be available to the community. That's very reassuring. It's great to know that we'll have all that available. Who ultimately decides what goes into the feasibility study? The community has provided input and that will be documented in the study. Community partners have also provided considerations that need to be addressed. Ultimately, the supervisor's office and the CEO will compile the final document that is presented to the board. Next question was, how can community visibly see their input in being taken into account? Will there be an addendum of community priorities? Well, the study will have a dedicated summary section and comprehensive appendix outlining the community engagement process and the uplifted community priorities and needs. So this has been vital through the process, is to make sure that not only do we have a platform for the community to share their comments, questions, and input, but to also show that it's being put to good use and that it will be visible once the study is concluded, to know that there was meaningful use of their participation throughout the process. So to wrap up, here's where we are in the timeline and the upcoming opportunities to hear more about the study. The study's community engagement team will be presenting at upcoming neighborhood council meetings, so we'll be reaching out to them. And we're planning for our final community at large meeting in mid-May, where we will be sharing the study report highlights with the community. So that's going to be a big one for all of us. There's going to be a lot of information made available at that time. We will also continue to make monthly presentations with the HICP as well, moving forward to the study phases. And we're excited to be concluding this phase. There's been a lot of hard work put in through all of our team and the community and all of you as it gets much closer to seeing the project become a reality. So thank you so much for your continued participation. And with that, I do realize we're a little strapped for time. As you all know, please, if you have any other questions or clarifications or what have you, please reach out to Heather or myself. Information provided below, and thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks again, Alex, and yeah, thanks everyone on the HICP, in the HICP membership, and particularly our community engagement steering committee members, the project team. It's been a really comprehensive effort over several years. I see Pam's comment about the community meeting being in person, the one in May. We should take that under advisement and see what the opportunity is. We've been playing it by ear as we go into these spring phases. So we'll see if there's an opportunity to do some portion of either the entirety of the meeting or some portion of a meeting in person. That's something we have discussed in the past, and I know we'd love to consider it for this final community meeting related to the feasibility study. Okay, we are past time. I'm going to wrap up really quickly, but I wanted to celebrate on behalf of the Wellness Center. We did have our 8th anniversary celebration on Saturday, March 12th. I thank everyone from the HICP membership and family who came out and joined us that day, supported us as an exhibitor and a contributor and supporter. Here's some pictures of the wonderful event and some highlights. We had more than 600 attendees, including adults and children. We were able to serve 550 grab-and-go meals for people to take away, distributed more than 1,000 pounds of fresh produce. We were able to complete some of those rent relief applications to get the process started for those individuals and families before the deadline that expired yesterday. We also had 300 pairs of eyeglasses given out by one of our community partners. All of this was supported by staff, volunteers, and exhibitors. And some of the highlights of the meeting were a presentation by Supervisor Solis's office, a performance by the Bravo High School Latin Jazz Band, and a recognition of a couple of the colleagues from the Wellness Center, Dr. Janina Morrison, who is stepping down as our medical director, and Cecilia Aguilar, who is retiring as our health advocate and promoter. So anyway, just a wonderful, beautiful day, great weather, a little steamy, but other than that, a wonderful opportunity. And we'll conclude here with one of the events of the day, which was a self-guided tour of the General Hospital feasibility site. And we had Ari Gutierrez and Monica Alcaraz and her daughter Noelani with us that day to share their kind of perspectives and highlights of the feasibility study process. So we thank them, as always, for their incredible support and partnership with all of the programs and projects sponsored by the Health Innovation Community Partnership. With that, my friends, we are at time. We are over time, but we are concluding. And I'm very excited to wish everyone a very happy April. I hope you enjoy your spring break and Easter celebrations, and we'll see you all back here on Friday, May 6th.